I can hear you. Hello. Yes. All right. Is that better? Should I do more? Okay. Awesome. Great. Great. Thank you so much.
One, two, three, four. Happy Kurt. Hello.
building a better Bay Area, moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC7 News.
Hi there, thanks for joining us. I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC7. Every day, right here, we talk with experts about issues important to the Bay Area and get answers for you in real time. Today, we have several important topics to dive into. Sea levels are rising. We'll have an expert from UC Berkeley to explain the extra threat to low-income communities in the Bay Area and what we can do about it. Also, today is California Clean Air Day. The director of the Coalition for Clean Air will be here to share how we can do our part. But first, the on-again, off-again offer for Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk to buy Twitter. Twitter shares soared yesterday on news that Elon Musk is again offering to pay $54.20 a share. Musk had previously tried to back out of buying the company, saying there were too many bots and not enough real human users. Joining us live now with the latest chapter of the Elon Musk Twitter saga is CNET reporter Abrar Al-Hidi. Abrar, it just seems to never end. Nice to have you back.
It never ends. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so how did Musk signal that the deal is back on?
So Musk's lawyer sent a letter to Twitter saying that he wants to go ahead with this deal at that price that they had agreed upon, the $54.20 a share. And it's been quite a saga. I mean, ever since he announced in April that he wanted to buy the company, things seemed like they were going to be going well. And then he pulled out and said that Twitter, he accused Twitter of essentially holding back information or lying about how many fake or spam accounts there were. And they were set to go to trial October 17th. That was still kind of on the calendar. And then we find out this week that he's like, you know what, never mind. We're actually just going to go ahead with the deal as planned.
So is the trial definitely off then?
I haven't heard anything about it being off yet. It is still kind of slated for that date. We're still waiting to hear back from Twitter to see if they will accept the offer. They're still kind of thinking about it. But we know that Twitter has wanted to proceed with this. So it's, potentially likely that they will just agree and then they won't have to go through the legal headache.
I mean, what's the thinking behind why he's willing to pay $54.20 again? Is it the lawsuit? Is it something else we don't know about?
It's really hard to get out of a merger agreement. And it seems that Musk and his lawyer kind of looked at those pretrial hearings and realized that they would have quite a battle ahead of them. So sure, they could go through 5 days of trial and then very likely still have to proceed with this, or they could just skip all of that, agree with it from now, and then just kind of prevent all of that, because that would have been, a whole saga as well. So they perhaps just realized it was easier to just go ahead with what was already decided.
Okay, so some controversial text messages were released as part of the lawsuit. Tell us what they said and what was the impact.
Yeah, would you mind telling me which text was this with? Oh, there's so much with Elon.
That's okay. You know what? There is actually so much. And so I'm just going to move on and talk to you about what happens now, right? Is the ball in the court of the Twitter leaders? Do they have to decide by a certain time whether to accept it? And how soon can we see the change of hands in ownership?
Yeah, so this is something that Twitter is still, we haven't heard yet from Twitter if this is something that they will proceed with. If it is, then we'll get final word about this going ahead. Timing is also up in the air. Again, it's so strange too with those trial dates having been scheduled for so soon. I mean, we're already in October as well. But it's likely that everyone just kind of wants this to go ahead. And I think what comes next too is that Elon has, because of all this back and forth, has stoked kind of distrust between him and the company, and also the company's employers. A lot of Twitter's employees, rather. So a lot of Twitter's employees are feeling up in the air about all of this too. What's the future of the company? What's the future of their roles now? So it will take a lot of kind of instilling trust again in the company and the direction of the company.
So what has this back and forth done to Twitter's stock and to Tesla's stock for that matter, since that's so deeply affected by the Twitter deal?
Yeah, it's been very up and down. And, when Elon accused Twitter of holding back information and when he used that as the reason for why he was pulling back, Twitter kind of countered and said, well, your personal wealth has fallen. That's why you no longer want to buy this company. So, we've seen the stock market also go up and down. This story has been all over the place as well. And, because he, Tesla and Twitter are now two things that he's very deeply involved in. We've seen both of those companies kind of go up and down. And so we'll see if anything kind of evens out as if this kind of gets settled. But yeah, the market's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Okay, and of course, what everybody's wondering is if Musk does become the owner of Twitter, what is likely to happen? I think he's now talking about turning it into an everything app called X. What is that?
This is kind of a bit of a mystery. So Musk has been talking a while about this app called X, and he wants it to be this, big super app where you can do all sorts of things. One of the things that he's compared it to is WeChat, which is really big in China. That's an app where you can do all sorts of things from grocery delivery to hailing a cab. And, he has mentioned when he spoke to Twitter employees, he was like, there's no WeChat equivalent here. What if we had an app that was like the super app where you can do all sorts of things? So he hasn't explicitly stated what this X app could be, but we know that he's not short of ambition. And so there's potential that he could try to fold a lot of things into Twitter if this deal does go through, and it would be something more than just a social media app.
All right, I guess we'll have to wait and see. What about this? Is there the sense that he might clean house, chop off the Twitter management, and also will employees leave in droves?
Yeah, there's already a bit of uncertainty. Even when it was announced that he would be buying the company, a lot of employees, people have strong feelings about Musk one way or the other. So a lot of people were already feeling uneasy. If it does go through, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people felt like they wanted to leave or were pushed out. But it's been such a roller coaster that I'm sure that there will be some changes still coming as well.
All right. What about what could happen to political speech or misinformation? As we know, a lot of banned people right now, even former President Trump. What could happen under a Musk ownership?
One of the things that Elon's talked about is how he wants to kind of curb back, these moderation practices on apps like Twitter. And so he has said that he would bring back President Donald Trump, who was, banned after the Capitol Hill riot. So a lot of people are uneasy about that as well, because they feel like it could threaten their safety. It could lead to more harassment on the platform. They feel like maybe Elon wouldn't have those rules in place to protect people. That's still something that we'd have to see, what changes he could bring and whether users and employees would agree with any of those changes.
Okay, and of course, Musk is a businessman, so he's going to want to make more money. How might he do that with Twitter? I mean, subscriptions, what are the options there?
One of the big things that Twitter's already facing, and a lot of social media platforms are facing, is ad revenue is down. That's across the board. And so a lot of these companies are leaning towards subscription services. So Twitter has really been trying to pitch Twitter Blue, which is its $5 a month subscription service. So even with a feature like being able to edit tweets, that's rolling out in countries right now, but you can only have access to that through Twitter Blue. So they're already pushing that subscription service. I'm sure Elon would push it even more. He's kind of, anti ad revenue, so he would probably try to push subscription services more. So that would definitely be one huge area where he would try to bring in more money into the company.
All right, we have about 30 seconds left, but what about the bots? How would he crack down on the bots he really, cited as part of trying to get out of the deal?
Yeah, he really has this huge vendetta against bots. And I think, he would definitely put more resources to tackling that, because that was something that he mentioned very early on is something that he really doesn't like. And again, was the reason he was trying to pull out of Twitter in the first place. So that's definitely something that we would likely see him try to fight even more.
Abrar Al-Hidi, CNET reporter, thank you so much. Always great talking with you. Learned so much. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, coming up next, rising sea levels could expose a toxic threat that's currently hidden underground. The possible impact and the part of the Bay Area that's facing the risk, the biggest risk, when Getting Answers returns.
In commercial break.
Welcome back. A rising ocean level poses a lot of risks: erosion of beaches, inundation of deltas, loss of marshes, but it also has behind a specific problem in part of the Bay Area. Joining us live now to talk about it is Christina Hill from the UC Berkeley College of Environmental Design to talk about the connection to a toxic threat, especially in West Oakland. Christina, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we don't talk about this threat posed by rising sea levels too much in the conversation, but it involves toxins in the soil. Explain that to us.
That's right. Everything people use, we spill at some point. And when there's industry in a landscape, over time we spill. And there's been a lot of industry in West Oakland and many other parts of the Bay, along with military sites, that have spilled toxic chemicals into the soil.
In addition to West Oakland, what are some of the other places in the Bay Area where we have these industrial sites with the toxins buried?
Obviously, Hunters Point in San Francisco has been a controversial site with a lot of pollution left over from the Navy.
Yeah.
The Zeneca site in Richmond, the whole south shoreline of Richmond has a couple Superfund sites and a lot of contamination. And East Palo Alto has some, East Oakland, San Jose, Palo Alto. Marin City in Marin County, the residents suspect that there's undocumented contamination. So it is fairly common in the Bay Area. Alameda, the North Point, also contaminated.
And when sea levels rise, how does that expose those toxins to us?
Yeah, most people don't realize that the ocean actually extends under the land and that salt water under the land, as the sea rises, that salty groundwater will also rise, and it'll push the lighter fresh water in the ground up higher, like a toe on the couch under a pillow. It's just going to push it up over time, and that's going to eventually emerge at the surface. But way before it comes up as surface flooding, it's going to cause a lot of other problems.
So look, until your work, few people have actually looked at the environmental health and social equity implications of rising sea levels statewide. What is it that you want people to know about that connection?
Probably the most important thing is that people of color were often confined to live in areas near industrial contamination when there were housing covenants in wealthier neighborhoods, and during a period of redlining when people couldn't borrow money from banks to buy their homes. So communities of color in California really lost out on opportunities to live in other places, and that's still where a lot of communities are concentrated, in areas with high soil pollution.
And what kind of damage can they cause?
Leukemia, all kinds of cancers outside of leukemia, miscarriages. There are many, many potential impacts on the human body of living with these toxins.
And based on what you described, it sounds like that the toxins could seep into the water supply as well, right?
Not in the water supply, but in a more subtle impact. The water that has contamination in it, that has a gas component, can move downhill into a sewer pipe, and then in the sewer pipe, move uphill into places where people work, schools, homes, and leak into their buildings through cracked old plumbing seals or through cracks in foundations.
So now that we realize the problem potentially, what can be done to prevent it?
We have to clean up a lot of these soils. We need to do more analysis of how sea level is going to cause the groundwater to rise and identify the places where there are serious risks, both to human health and to the bay, and remove those toxic soils before the sea level rises into them.
Is that work being done?
Unfortunately, we've done a lot of capping over the last 40 years where you put clay or concrete over the top, other materials, like putting an umbrella over the polluted soil, and that's meant to keep it dry. But now that the water is coming up from below, we really need to rethink that strategy. And the city of San Francisco Board of Supervisors is now considering that for Hunters Point.
Got it. So capping is not enough. You really need to remove it, right?
Caps are protecting you from rain, but not from groundwater coming up.
Okay. This toxic threat, of course, is, as you mentioned, a result of the legacy of racism in housing in terms of who's mostly impacted. So some people, I understand, are seeking reparations now, right? What does that mean in this case? What do they have in mind?
Well, I know Ms. Margaret Gordon has mentioned the idea of thinking of this as a form of reparations. She's in West Oakland. And well, I think that's just because it would be acknowledging that it was systemic racism that required people to live in those places instead of moving to the hills in Oakland. I don't think it's enough reparations. So it could be a component, but there are so many other ways that families lost out on building wealth because they were prevented from owning homes, for example. I would think of this as a component of reparations, and it certainly would be justice to clean up those soils and prevent more generations of children from being exposed.
UC Berkeley is part of the Toxic Tides Project. Tell us about the project and its goal.
Yes, and that's my colleague Rachel Morello-Frosch and some other faculty at UCLA. And they have done a different project, which is to look at sea level rise and its impact, the salt water moving onto the land over the whole coast of California. And that's a wonderful project, but a different piece from what I'm working on, which is the Bay Area and what might happen here with just a few inches of rise in the groundwater.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Christina Hill, to explain what we're facing here. And I do appreciate it. We hope to keep the conversation going.
Thank you. And I really hope that this broadcast will help people like the governor and Jared Blumenthal, the Secretary of Environmental Protection, realize that this is their responsibility to engage and take a position about what's going to happen to protect people.
And allocate funding too, right? Thank you so much. All right, coming up next, it's California Clean Air Day. Ahead, we find out what we all can do to help improve our air quality and take a look at the areas most impacted by air pollution. So don't go away.
In commercial break.
All right. Welcome back. Happy Clean Air Day. Today is California Clean Air Day. The statewide effort is intended to teach us all more about our air quality, celebrate successes, and create opportunities to work together for continued progress. And when it comes to air pollution, we can all do our part. Joining us live now is Brian Sheridan, Development and Engagement Director for the Coalition for Clean Air. Brian, thanks for your time.
It's my pleasure.
All right, for those who had never heard of California Clean Air Day, what is it and what are we supposed to do today?
You know, right now, millions of people across the state are taking a pledge. And that pledge is to do at least one thing for clean air. You know, whether that's taking public transit, you know, changing out your air filter in your home, trying an electric car for the first time, planting a tree. there are a bunch of ways that people can do their part for clean air in their communities.
All right, I'm taking a look at your pledge form webpage, and you do divide it up between individuals, most of us, children, youth, and organizations. Let's talk about how, if you're in one of these groups, how you can approach it. So how about we start with kids? What can they do?
There is one item that is on the kids pledge and the adult pledge that crosses over, and that is idling. So a big problem at particularly elementary school is where the line to pick up kids can start as early as a half hour early. And so many parents will get there and they'll just sit there with their car running, which, we've all seen the gas prices, boggles my mind. But it also has real consequences for still developing lungs. So one of the things that we have on the Kids Pledge is tell your parents to stop idling. And in fact, one of my favorite past years Clean Air Day stories was a middle school student who printed out T-shirts that said, idling gets you nowhere, because that's a great, so true in both the literal sense and the figurative sense.
Yeah, look, I've been in one of those lines before, and I did always wonder about that. It's like, we're all parked here, there's exhaust coming out, and the kids are running around near us, still doing PE or whatever as we wait for them to finish. So yeah, and that's not just a drop in the bucket, is it?
No, idling contributes to ozone majorly. It's a big problem, and it's just one small thing that we can all do. Our transportation sector, honestly, is the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state, but it's also a major source of particulate matter in our communities, as well as ozone. And so when we can get people to think about their role in that sector, and that includes idling, it includes leaving the car at home, it includes, swapping your existing car out for an electric vehicle, then we're doing a lot of good. And, that's why we ask people to do that. You
also have some 500 business and government agencies as partners. What are they committing to help celebrate Clean Air Day and ensure clean air?
One of the things I love about California Clean Air Day is I don't know what people may think of in terms of the companies that are plugged into the effort to improve air quality, but that list is very diverse. We've got everyone from scooter companies to transit agencies to bakeries who are doing vegan goods for the day, to some people that you might think of, like Electrify America, or others, and so, everybody's plugging in, if you will, in their own way. One of the folks on the list, a construction company, just put out a great article on some of the things that they've implemented. For example, they don't allow for any kind of idling among their subcontractors at their construction site. So they announced that on Clean Air Day, in addition to investments in electric vehicles. But the number one thing that we're asking of all of these entities is to engage either their employees, their riders, if they're a transit agency, or their customers in joining them and taking that pledge. So, we've got a little bit of a competition going, which is great because it drives engagement. And we're really proud to see just that diversity of organizations taking part.
Wow, that's great. Look, it's well documented that poor air quality does affect our health. So many serious illnesses, from stroke to heart disease to lung cancer, other chronic problems. But I want to ask you, just like in our last segment, we talked about how rising sea levels will increase the toxin exposures to people in low-income neighborhoods more. Is there greater impact on people in low-income neighborhoods from poor air?
Yeah, like so many things in this world, air quality is not equal opportunity. Low-income communities of color tend to bear the brunt of the worst air pollution in this state, and that's true even in the Bay Area. If you look at communities like West Oakland, or Bayview Hunters Point, or parts of Richmond, they tend to bear similar statistics, and a lot of that comes back to where the transportation choices that we made. The one thing that we have in common across all of these communities is that that link to transportation. And that's why we focus so much on transportation. So whether it's transportation from the goods movement, or transportation from our refineries, or transportation because you live right next to a freeway, that's the biggest factor.
And I know that's why your group has really been supporting the ban of new gas-powered vehicles in California by the year 2035. That certainly is something that is a step in that direction. But before we go, in the 20 seconds we have left, I just want you to tell me what you think are the latest efforts that are our biggest successes in terms of improving our air quality.
We have come a long way. There's no doubt. The California Air Resources Board announcing the no more electric vehicles by 2030 is a huge step in the right direction. And I think I'll just talk about what we need to do, though. We really need to get people to try transit again. That ridership has fallen tremendously. And so on Clean Air Day, I want to ask everybody, if you've gotten away from it, to give it a try again this week. It doesn't have to be today if you're seeing this late, but this week, give it a shot again for Clean Air Day.
Brian Sheridan, Development and Engagement Director for the Coalition for Clean Air. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll take a short break and be right back.
In commercial break.